So hello and welcome to the second episode of The Spin Bin, the show where mainstream propaganda is rerun and unspun. Featuring on tonight's show, Ireland's #1 spin master, everybody's favourite, the state broadcaster RTE. We'll have a look at Monday night's programming, which included RTE Investigates and Upfront with Katie Hannon. And from Tuesday night, we look at a blockbuster episode of Primetime. Very exciting stuff, wait till you see. Joining me on tonight's show, we have Susanne Delaney. Hello, Susanne. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
Very good, thank you. And as well as that, we are joined tonight by two very special guests. Believe it or not, we have the Waterboys in studio. Not the band, even better. We have John Waters and Dr. Gerry Waters, both of whom, by the way, are running in the European elections for the for the West Midlands constituency, I think. So let's see if the lads are here to join us. Hello, John. Hello, Gerry.
Hello, Stephen.
Hello, Stephen. Hello,
Well,
Susanne. Hello, John.
Hello,
Lovely to
Gerry.
see you all.
Great to see you all, and thanks for joining us tonight. So, lads, you're running in the European elections. We might do another show about that another time and get into all of your policies and the reasons why you're running and all that. Would you like to say anything just about your campaign before we get into the show tonight? John, Gerry, why are you running? What are you running for?
I think I'm not quite sure. Are we, myself and Gerry, are we running with each other or against each other? You know, we're in the same constituencies, but you know, we live at opposite ends. You know, so it's a kind of a pincer movement that we're undertaking here. But no, I think we're myself and Gerry are on the same page in a lot of things. I think we're very different characters, but the same name. We're great stuff, you know. And you know, I think the moment is here now. For me, anyway, the moment has come when people either begin to realize that they're going to have to do something very radical with their country and with those who run it. In other words, like kick them out and replace them, or else it's kaput, you know. There's not a lot of spare room between us on the cliff now at this stage, I think, you know. So that's where I stand on that.
Yeah. John, Gerry.
I suppose, unlike John, I probably have to introduce myself. I was the only doctor in Ireland who I was suspended from the medical register for my refusal to go along with what was in effect the COVID pathogenicity hoax. There was never a virus of any great relevance. There was never a need for lockdowns, masking, social distancing. So, and there was definitely no need for a messenger RNA, an altered viral RNA. So there was never a need for any of these things. I refused to go along with it point blank. I wouldn't wear a mask. I wouldn't social distance. I wouldn't do any of the things that they ordered me to do because I knew they were wrong and have since been proven that I was right. So why am I running in the Midlands North? I think is its correct constituency. Why am I running in it? Because to an extent, the truth has to be told. And I consider myself to be running with John rather than against John. We are. I would consider. I don't know if John was probably loath to admit this, but we're actually good friends. We get on very well. We've worked on a few things in the last couple of months together. We actually work well together. Our ideologies are different in many ways, and our personalities are very definitely different. But we very much complement one another. John, I would consider an expert on legal matters and constitution and history and culture and that. And my strength would be in terms of the sciences. I would have a very firm understanding of science, primarily because I, as a kid, was dyslexic and probably still dyslexic. So I had to learn in a different way from other kids. I learned by understanding things, and I still understand the basic science. And I understand the science of medicine, and I understand the science of climate change, and I understand the science of methane and carbon dioxide, and all the things that they're trying to destroy Irish farming with. And my policy would be to stand up against lies. And fundamentally, that is what I hope to do. But if it comes down to questions on the Constitution or law on that, I'll pass them on to my chuckle brother.
Very good. Brilliant. Well, what a duo, and fair play to you for running. Myself and Susanne are big fans of both of you, and it's great to have you on the show. So, look, we've only got an hour. We're going to try and do this in an hour, so we better get straight into it. First of all, we look at Monday night's programming on RTE. They had RTE Investigates, which was a program about abortion, and then they had Katie Hannon Upfront afterwards, which was about religion in being taught in schools. Now, the RTE Investigates program on abortion, as far as I could see, the message basically was that that this 12-week time frame to have an abortion in should be extended, and as well as that the 3-day waiting time to have an abortion also should be removed. That's kind of what I took from the show. So let me start off and play this first clip, and then we'll get your opinions on that.
5-day wait for treatment.
Oops.
Problems with the 3-day mandatory wait are just one of a myriad of issues raised in a landmark review of Ireland's abortion legislation by barrister Miriam O Callaghan. The Termination of Pregnancy Act had provided for such a review 3 years after its implementation. Delivered to government early last year, the report made several recommendations for amendments to Ireland's abortion laws, including that the 3-day wait be made optional. That, Miriam O Callaghan states, is because it often extends to a 4- or 5-day wait for treatment if abortion services are unavailable at weekends or on public holidays. Up against a tight 12-week deadline, the mandatory waiting period can, she says, impose a physical and psychological burden on women, possibly causing them to time out of care in Ireland.
We have a 3-day wait. The Chief Medical Officer confirmed to me there's no medical need for it. So there's a huge risk of timing out. 12 weeks does sound like quite a lengthy time to get yourself to a GP. But if you think of it, there are categories of people who have an irregular menstrual cycle. There will be people who are using contraception, and that contraception, unknowingly to them, has failed. There are people who mistake the signs of pregnancy for something else. And there are people who have chaotic lifestyles. So for a variety of reasons, people may present when they're perilously close to the end of the 12-week period, and that's a problem.
Now, I suppose I'd just like to state on the record that personally I'm against abortion. I voted against repealing the 8th Amendment, and that's just my personal view. And that doesn't, however, impact on how I view anyone who's had an abortion or anything like that. I know it's a very complicated issue and all that. But I just thought it was very interesting that on Monday night in RTE, they started off with a program basically wanting to essentially increase the number of abortions, and it was followed by a show that wanted to get rid of religion in schools. But first things first, I'm sure, John, and we might go to John maybe first on that. I think you've made your opinions clear on abortion in the past, but what do you think of RTE's programming on Monday night?
Well, on the question of the abortion thing, I mean, this is something that we've seen again and again, the salami tactic. You know, we have a referendum, you know, there's a debate. There are concerns on both sides, perhaps, but you know the government then will issue reassurances with review to the future and cast iron reassurances, of course. And then after a kind of a very short judicious wait after the referendum, the whole thing starts up again, and they start to chip away at those assurances and try to dismantle them. And that's what's happening here. And you know, at the end of the day, there's no end to this. It just goes on and on and on. There's no limit other than the outer limit. You know, or the moment when the Irish people say enough now, that's enough. And that never happens because the democracies, the democratic structures that we used to have that made that voice possible to be heard, they're no longer there. So the whole force of propaganda and manipulation and so on, the corrupt media we have, mainstream media, that means that the other side can never get a word in edgeways or a word in a way that is kind of helpful to the issue. Because if you listen to these discussions, one thing, you know, jumps out at me, but I guess it doesn't jump out at everybody because precisely these conditions that the baby is no longer visible, is no longer audible in these discussions. It's like it's if it's some kind of, you know, growth and has to be removed. And that is not, leaving aside the medical or ethical or philosophical aspects of that. That is just not good democracy. It's not a good way to allow these discussions to be framed, because there is another human being in this equation, and the question of how you balance the rights of those two human beings has never been resolved. It's simply been evaded, and it's simply been evaded above all by euphemism. You know, that we keep hearing these terminologies like reproductive rights. You know, well, reproductive rights in this context seems to me to be deproductive rights. They're the destruction of a human life, and that is not something we should allow. Whatever we think about it, it is deadly if we if we allow it to be obscured and removed from the discussion. If these issues are worthy of ventilation and there are clear and serious issues, then they should be devoid of all euphemism and devoid of all evasion, so that people can actually hear and see what they're being asked to do and what's being done as the next step in all of these things.
Gerry, are you still a doctor?
Oh, I am still a doctor. Yeah, they can take away my license to practice in Ireland, but they can't take away the degree that I gained in University College Galway in 1977. I earned that through examination, and they can't take that away. So
tell us your experience now, Gerry.
Yeah. I over the years have had quite a lot of contact with people who want abortions or have had abortions. I, like you, Stephen, I'm against abortion. I hate the concept of abortion. I think it's abhorrent. In every society, unfortunately, there are cases. And I know, as my one-time friend, William Binchy, Professor William Binchy, you say, sad cases make bad law. And I think it's very important that we don't base law on unfortunate cases. But you have got this, and again, with this Miriam O'Shea, I think she's been a little bit disingenuous in trying to make out as if a lot of women, or enough women, have the 12 weeks is too short because they've got menstrual disturbances or they've got various reasons why they can't get to a GP. That's absolute rubbish. When a woman thinks she's pregnant or knows she's pregnant, it would be a very, very rare woman who wouldn't notice changes within 3 or 4 weeks of conception. So this idea that 12 weeks or 3 months is, could be argued, I would totally disagree with. I would also disagree with the idea of the 3-day mandatory waiting period. That to me would be the idea that a woman has a chance to reconsider. That's only fair. If you buy an item in electrical item, you got a chance to bring it back within a certain time. So what I'd say is I think it's only fair, and I think it's disingenuous of her to sort of try and stretch it out. Oh, it could become 5 days and might bring her over to 12 weeks. I think that is dishonest. From the angle from which she's coming at it. And as I say, 3 months, there's lations of time for women to realize they're pregnant, even if they've got, prolonged periods or prolonged menstrual cycle. As I say, I've also come across the hard cases. And again, I would say hard cases make bad law. William Binchy used to say that. But overall, I've come across the hard cases. I've got involved. And I think it's very, very easy for people. The further you are away from the problem, the easier it is to be dogmatic and judgmental. The closer you get to the problem, the more grey and difficult the decisions become. All I would always say, I would always support a woman irrespective of what decision she made. And I will support her all the way, in a sense that if she has an abortion and she comes back, I will not in any way be judgmental or say she was wrong. In fact, I will always say to her, you made the right decision for you at that point in time. And that's my job as a doctor. My job is to support people, not to make decisions for them.
Thanks, Gerry. Now let's get a woman's perspective on this. Susanne, I'll just unmute you there. I know your sound isn't great, so apologies to anyone at home. So Susanne, can you hear us okay?
Yeah, well, I identify as a man these days, so, you know.
Oh, do you? Oh, you're in good company.
Yeah. Well, I identify as a woman, actually, now that you mention it. I'm a lesbian woman.
Oh, yeah.
Susanne, tell us, what's your opinion of RTE's Monday night programming there, starting with their program on abortion? We'll get to the removing religion from schools in a second.
Okay, well, when I watch RTE these days, which is not very regularly, or any kind of media source or government source, what I always see is that no matter what the subject is, there's manipulation at play here, and there's always a weaponization of people's empathy. People, they want to do the right thing, and they voted in good faith, whether or not we agree with that decision. They voted in good faith at the time. I hope now people are a little bit more aware. I'm a little bit more aware of how we're manipulated. But people need to understand how far these things can go. And in the North, a lot of people might not be aware, but they basically operate a policy of you can access an abortion up to birth if if there's a case of like a cleft palate or a club foot or Down syndrome, so non-fatal abnormalities, and some of these abnormalities can be fixed very easily. So I'm not a doctor like Gerry, but I understand that when it comes to cleft palate, it's rarely an indication of a more serious issue, and this can be fixed within a few days of a baby being born. So it's a physical impairment, as in an aesthetic impairment in a lot of cases. And so Sinn Féin and People Before Profit voted to keep this aspect of the abortion bill. There was a bill put forward, I think it was called the Severe Fetal Impairment Bill. It was an amendment to the current abortion bill in 2021. It was put forward, and this bill would have proposed that it would be removed from the law that you could abort a baby up to term for these non-fatal abnormalities. And Sinn Féin and People Before Profit voted against this. So that means they're pro abortion up to term. And 72% of people in the North voted, they did a poll, and 72% of people were against this practice. So just to be clear, this bill would have kept the provision of abortions up to term for fatal fetal abnormalities. So they were essentially what has been voted for here, or voted against rather, by Sinn Féin and People Before Profit, is eugenics. And there's no other word for it. When you're aborting a baby up to birth, regardless, I really don't think a lot of people would agree with that, regardless of what they voted for.
Nobody would.
I just can't imagine they would.
So it's just people need to be aware of where it goes. And just to say a final point on that, if you don't mind. So there's a growing support around the world amongst doctors for infanticide as well. And there's two bioethicists, Francesca Minerva and I have the other guy's name here, Alberto Glabini. They're pushing this notion of infanticide. So it goes beyond abortion, and that's where it's going. And I know people find that hard to believe, but already in the Netherlands and in Belgium, in the Netherlands, they do euthanize babies in their cots up to 1 year of age when they have certain disabilities. And these two scientists and other doctors, they feel that basically the moral status of an infant is irrelevant because they've no self-awareness. So they advocate for that it's okay to kill a child up until the point where they have self-awareness. And I think, talking about the moral status of an infant is ironic here, because clearly these people have no morality. So regardless of people's views on abortion, you know, they've got to understand where it goes, and the same goes for euthanasia, which we will not have a vote upon. So, you know, maybe we can talk about that again. I probably gone on too long.
No doubt we will, definitely. I know RTE in the last 2 or 3 months have done a couple of programs on that, so we will definitely come back to it. Let me hop to this second clip. So straight after RTE Investigates had that program on abortion, they followed it up with Upfront with Katie Hannon. So Susanne, I'll come to you straight after this clip as well, okay?
Sure.
I am.
So you have to teach faith formation?
Yes, that would be part of my job description, and I just want to make it clear, I'm very happy to do whatever is required of me as part of my contract. However, it's very hard for me personally. I'm not a practicing Catholic, although raised one. It's very hard for me to, I suppose, teach something that I don't, it doesn't align with my views. More especially than that, I find it very hard to have to teach children inside in a class that don't believe in that their families don't subscribe, and it's the family choice. It's a personal choice. Religion is deeply personal and subjective, and therefore I think it should be up to the family to educate their children when it comes to religion, not up to the schools.
You agree with that, Susanne?
Well, right off the bat, just about this particular teacher, she is what's wrong with the educational system in terms of teachers just going along with whatever they're told. So she's very happy to do whatever is required of her, she says. So in my opinion, right off the bat, that disqualifies her from being someone who I would trust to teach my child, because obviously she's fine going along with masks and all the things that were imposed upon children. And we're going to be talking later on about suicide and self-harm in children, that obviously put an awful lot of pressure on children for a very long time in this country. But, you know, she says she's not comfortable teaching religion, especially to children who don't believe in that religion. Well, parents can opt their children out for a start. And secondly, you know, is she comfortable teaching graphic, quote, sex? I don't like using the term sex education because it's not sex education, it's indoctrination. But, you know, don't mean to be crude, but like, is it a case of why teach children about God when you can teach them about how to perform a sex act instead? This book is gay, you know, is floating around in libraries and schools, and is this lady happy to teach that? Like, why is it so bad to learn about religion? Christianity. It seems to be only Christianity that's a problem.
So, John, what do you think there? Are you in favour of religion being removed from school?
No, I'm not. I wouldn't be in favour at all of that. I mean, like, this is quite a confusing situation when you see a particular woman, a particular teacher being asked this question as though her answer is kind of definitive in terms of the whole issue and of teachers in general. It seems to me, I mean, straight away I would say, well, I don't know what she teaches, like, but okay, she's not interested in religion, she has no religion, fine. She shouldn't teach religion, obviously. But to extrapolate from that then that there's, you know, a movement among teachers generally, or that teachers, you know, don't want to do this anymore, that's a mistake. This is what RTE is trying to suggest here, you know. So, I mean, what we should be looking at is you know, the question of transcendence and you know, the starting from the idea that there is no society in the history of the world has survived for any more than 2 generations without a concept of transcendence at its core. And therefore, what we're doing in this context is actually pure suicidal. It's not progressiveness. It's not modern. It's nothing like that. It's quite the opposite. And this is very dangerous, obviously, for the future of our society. If, you know, even leaving aside all the other dangers we have, which may get, they may push us over the cliff first. Like, but if they don't, this one will definitely get us in the end. because, you know, without a transcendent imagination, a society can't function, and indeed human beings can't function, even though many atheists within our societies tell us that they can. But what they're forgetting is that they're functioning within religious, transcendent, imaginative societies, which is a rather different thing to be going out in the desert and trying to survive as an atheist. I wish them luck with that. You know, so there's a lot of complex questions that are never allowed into this. And the last place, of course, you would expect to hear complex questions discussed will be RTE. So in a certain sense, we shouldn't even be thinking about what RTE is doing in this context, other than thinking about how we might close it down in the not too distant future, you know, and start again from the beginning.
Yeah, I mean, I just think it's crazy that on the state broadcaster on a Monday night, with everything that's going on in the country and everything that's going on in the world, they have a program kind of promoting abortion, extending abortion, and followed up by removing religion from schools. It's just, it's crazy to me. Gerry, do you have any thoughts on it yourself on Monday night's programming?
Yeah. Well, I just happened to notice that what she was talking about was faith formation. I think that's what they refer to it as faith formation. So what she kind of, it was kind of a three-card trick where she switched from faith formation, which to me would be an understanding of sort of elementary psychology and the need for a structure to your thinking around what you believe and what you should believe, and so that I think to an extent she looked to me like somebody who was almost a plant put in there to make a statement from a personal point of view that she objected to teaching religion. But is it religion? And I think it's very, very important that in a Christian society, a Catholic society, as we have here in Ireland, it's very, very important for the cohesion of society and for trust within society that people have an understanding of religion. I'm a firm believer in the principle of Christianity being the best of all religions. Bar none. So, the whole idea that she objects to, as I say, there's a difference between teaching faith formation and the concepts of religion than pushing a religion down one's throat, as you would get in the madrasas and that. So, as I say, and again, as you say, the idea that this is the agenda of RTE, which it obviously is, to demonize religion and demonize faith formation and replace it by purely, from what I can see, is sort of the basis for belief structure is sexuality, which is kind of distressing. And as John says, no society will survive under those conditions. There again, I believe that's what they're trying to do. I believe they're trying to bring down our society.
Absolutely, yeah, I agree as well. And I suppose, let's move on to Tuesday night, because Tuesday night is really what I want to get into here, prime time on Tuesday night, because it started off, I didn't know what was on the show. It was a shock to me. It was a surprise. I wasn't expecting it, especially the second part, which we'll get to. But first of all, they started talking about the increase in the levels of self-harm amongst Irish teens, self-harm and suicide. And they tried to equate this with social media, specifically TikTok. And that there's a lot of harmful content on TikTok, and that it's causing young people to feel depressed and to self-harm and to take their own lives and stuff like that. What they didn't mention, which I thought was very interesting, is the whole COVID period, which I think would have had a massive impact on children's and teenagers' mental health. But they didn't go there. But anyway, the reason, so we have the problems with self-harm and suicide, and it's because of social media. So what we need to do is we need to curtail social media, and we need to bring in laws so that the algorithms can't be showing us harmful content. and who the hell knows what harmful content is or will ever be. So let me just play. I'm going to play a little bit of this, the start of this show. I'll just play 2 clips.
20 minutes in now, and nearly all the videos I'm being shown are related to mental health struggles. I'm seeing a lot more reference to self-harm and scars. According to figures from the National Suicide Research Foundation, self-harm rates have increased in Ireland over recent years, rising from a little over 11,000 in 2013 to over 12,600 in 2021.
Now, just let me play the second clip here as well, because time is kind of getting ahead of us. So I just want to follow up with this guy. This is Johnny Ryan from the Council for Civil Liberties.
Point where we're asking these tech companies to fix the problems that they have created for our children. Our regulator, Commission Naman, has the power in law to tell TikTok or any other company in this same category, stop. Your algorithm that is hurting our kids, switch that off.
Switch that off. And what other, Susanne, what other content will they be switching off? They might be switching off this show. This might be harmful content.
Yeah, we're
Absolutely.
not diverse enough.
I hope so.
Anyone want to come in on this? Do you know what? I might just play. Let me just play one more clip here of this, unless anyone wants to get in at this point. Let me play one more clip here. Okay, so this is Donnelly. They had Minister for Health Stephen Donnelly in studio. A rare outing. I haven't seen him in a while.
Legislation to stop that.
We need robust legislation to stop.
We need robust legislation to stop that sort of content, to stop the algorithm, to protect our children. Will the government introduce that legislation?
There's 2 critical pieces of legislation. One is at a European level and one is at an Irish level. The European Digital Services Act passed just last year, towards the end of last year. To the EU's credit, they often get criticised for not moving very quickly. It's a really important piece of legislation. On the back of that, they can launch investigations against TikTok, against other social media companies. The Digital Services Act and the Online Safety Media Act here, which was passed in 2022, that set up Commission Naman. That has an online safety regulator.
So, Susanne, that sounds like something good, is it? Are we happy with that? Are you happy with that?
Well, this is another case of just weaponizing people's empathy. You know, oh, the children are self-harming and there's suicide, like they care. They really don't care. This really annoys me because so much harm is being done and has been done to children in this country for the last few years, through, you know, the education system and as you say, with COVID, the lockdowns. We know that children suffered significantly from not being able to see their friends, being pressured with things that, you know, no child should ever have to feel responsibility for. Like if you hug your granny, she's going to die. You need to get your, you know, we had Micheál Martin, our Taoiseach at the time, asking children on national television, you know, we need to ask you one more thing. We need you to get vaccinated. And the manipulation and outright grooming of children was really, like, if you go onto TUSLA's website and look up the definitions of grooming and emotional abuse, you'll find that the state is very much guilty of doing that to children in this country. And Niall Muldoon, the Children's Ombudsman, didn't step in at all. I mean, you know, and Commission Naman, there's a program. I'm going to have to read out this name because it's a hard one to pronounce, but there's a program by, I'm going to call her a lady, although she refers to herself as she, them, Dil Wik Rameshinge. I think she's an Indian lady, and she describes herself as, she's a psychotherapist who describes herself as a polyamorous mum on her Twitter page.
Which is?
Well, she likes to have, you know, multiple relationships at the same time. And she's
okay, yeah, good for her.
Describes herself as a lifelong queer and an advocate of transgender issues. And so if you just bear with me for a second, I am going somewhere with this. So she has a show on FM 104 and it's called Come In. And she every week interviews NGOs like TENI, so the Transgender Equality Network Ireland, who are a very dubious organisation who push puberty blockers on children, long-term effects, you know, are not good of those. It's basically sterilizing children and, you know, chemically castrating them. Studies show that a long-term study in Sweden that took place over, I think, like 30 years, shows that transitioning doesn't help gender dysphoria, and those who transition are 20 times more likely to take their own lives. So on sorry, someone say it for me there. On their website, they say one of their duties is, you know, they regulate content, online content, and that one of their duties is to protect children. So guess who sponsors this show that I'm talking about, that pushes puberty blockers on, you know, talks about all of these things that we're concerned about to do with children, and that can lead to self-harm. There's been psychiatrists in this country who have expressed serious concerns about children being sent to the Tavistock before it was closed down. They said these children that are being sent are vulnerable, unwell, self-harming, have suicidal thoughts, and you know, so the groups like TENI, these are groups that support this. And that show is sponsored by Comisiún na Man, with your license fee. That's what it says. If you go to FM 104 and you look this up, it says this show is sponsored by Comisiún na Man with your license fee. So they don't care about children as far as I'm concerned.
That seems apparent. Yeah, Jenny Mac. That's amazing.
Sorry, that took a little bit to explain, but it's probably you know, worth letting people know that.
John, John or Gerry?
Yeah, well, I agree with Susanne. Like, you see, this is a problem that we have, given the kind of politicians we have and what's happened to our politics. Because no matter what these guys say now, we have to kind of think about it twice at least and say, okay, what's the agenda here? What's going on here? Because, you know, you might well say that there are questions and issues relating to, you know, welfare of children and young people online. I mean, that's an issue that's been around for ages and ages and ages. But it's only, I've noticed, it's only when these issues become useful to these guys in terms of their control grid agenda that they become interested in them. I mean, they're talking about suicide. I was writing about suicide 30 odd years ago in the Irish Times, trying to draw attention to the fact that, you know, massively disproportionate numbers of young boys and men were killing themselves. Nobody was interested. I couldn't get any politician to respond to it, to take it up, to even talk about it, because it was infra-dig to be talking about men in any context or boys in any context, because feminism was the end thing. And so now, I always kind of adopt the line of, you know, beware the Greeks when they bring gifts. Like, whenever these guys seem to be doing something that is necessary in some sense, then please pay attention, and look at what their agenda is. Well, immediately we see Minister Donnelly talking about the Digital Services Act. We know exactly what they did. The Digital Services Act is nothing to do with protecting children. It's about imposing control on speech and thought in our societies. That's the purpose of it. This is a part of the new totalitarianism that has been uploaded into our societies on an incremental but increasingly rapid way. And this is what they're all about now. This is what everywhere you go, no matter what it is you encounter now, this is the subtext: shutting people up, silencing people under this heading or that heading or the other heading. And I've said 1,000 times, you know, that here we are in 2024, 40 years from the mythical year of 1984, you know, the year that Orwell made iconic, and in terms of these very issues and tyranny and censorship and all. And now I look back at 1984, and it was like in Ireland, a haven of freedom and decency and potential and possibility, compared to this appalling year we've arrived in now, with these creeps in charge of our country, sneakily imposing all their agendas, lying through their teeth at every opportunity. And I would really say, if people want to look at the concept of progress and think about these guys, they should really look at these 2 years, 1984, 2024, and you look at them and you say, something's wrong here. Oh, I know. If you want progress, you got to put them back to front, because you got to put 1984 in the future, because that's the kind of place we would like to live in.
Gerry, just before I bring in, I want to give you another clip. It's another one of Donnelly. I'll just add to the show, and then you can get in on all of these. I'd like to get your opinion on these, Gerry. Oh, bear with me now. So Donnelly's talking about serious legislation coming across the EU here and some harmful content. Hang on.
It's done with governments asking these social media companies to do the right thing. We are seeing very clear links to self-harm, suicide ideation, violence against women, all sorts of horrific stuff. We're now moving from a conversation with social media companies saying we want you to do the right thing. We're now moving in Ireland and across the EU to say we have very serious legislation in place. There are already live investigations against you. If we find against you, there will be massive fines. And critically, in the Irish legislation,
when is this online safety code going to be published?
Proceedings
Because we were told it was to stop self-harm ideation being fed to our 13, 14, 15-year-olds.
The Media Commission is also empowered to do that. So what I'm saying is the binding code is not just on age verification. Okay. It's on harmful content, which our children, I believe, are being targeted with.
Yeah, harmful content that our children are being targeted with. But again, has this term harmful been defined properly? Obviously, that would be a worry. What do you reckon, Gerry? Is this a good thing? Or do you believe Mr. Donnelly there?
Well, I was just thinking there, you're looking for my opinion. Unfortunately, my brother John has just elucidated my opinion pretty much. He's stolen all my good words like totalitarianism and 1984 and that. And so I kind of left in a situation where I'm floundering around now looking for new ideas. Thanks, John. So
I'm here to save your breath. Yeah, I'm here to save your breath, Gerry. Yeah,
Gerry, your specialist subject is coming up next, by the way, Gerry.
Yeah, no, I'm always suspicious when you see people plucking dates out of the air. Like they pick from 2013 to 2021, and as you say again, as Stephen said, yeah, you know, like. The mental health problems have come streaming in over the last 2 years. So where's 22 and 23? I've no doubt that they've a fairly good assessment on those. They've definitely got it for 22. But why did they stop it at 21? So when you see any sort of statistics or any graph with sort of spurious dates pulled out of the air, you're kind of wondering, well, what happened in 11 and 12 and 10 and 22 and 23. So I'm a little bit suspicious. And again, you know, as John said, this again is disingenuous in a sense that they're trying to introduce hate speech laws or hate speech concepts or misinformation type things in the name of children. And again, that's scurrilous. That's massively dishonest. As Susanne says, they're not interested in children. If they were, they wouldn't have the books in the schools. They wouldn't be teaching, you know, gender dysphoria type things and sexual education to 7 and 8-year-olds. Of course they wouldn't. You know, this early sexualization of children is invariably, and it's proven all over the world, to be detrimental to children's mental health. There's no doubt about it. And you know, if they had any interest in children, they would not be going down that road. They're not. They're bringing in legislation to shut the likes of John Waters up, which, you know, might be a bad idea.
It'd be a terrible idea. That was part 1 of Prime Time, and I couldn't believe my eyes when I saw the second part. We had a superstar Anthony Fauci, all the way from the US of A, in the house. Give it up. Here we go. Here's the intro.
Anthony Fauci became the world's most famous scientist and physician during the COVID-19 crisis. During his career, he's worked with 7 US presidents, including Donald Trump and Joe Biden, before retiring in 2022 at the age of 82. Born in Brooklyn in December 1940, Anthony Fauci is of Italian extraction, and he was educated by the Jesuits in New York. His long career has spanned the treatment of many high-profile viruses. Professor Fauci is in Dublin to receive the Stern Medal, an award for his outstanding contribution to medicine from the Royal College of Physicians in Ireland.
When the disinformation could get people to do or not do things that would be detrimental to their health, then that's a very serious thing. So people like myself in the public health arena and the scientific arena who have the responsibility to communicate with the public, it makes it even more compelling to continue to give important, correct information based on data, based on evidence, and based on fact.
Okay, Gerry, we'll have to go to you first. What's your opinion of this man here? Like, you know, is he all about the, do you trust him? Is he all about the facts and the evidence? And has he got all the data there? He talks about disinformation and misinformation. But you have a theory on that, like, you know, something you mentioned to me earlier.
Yeah, yeah. Well, first of all, he nauseates me. Just listening to the man, and he nauseates me. And to think that RTE, or worse still, the Royal College of Physicians, and these people know, they know exactly. They knew about the pathogenicity of the virus in 20. They knew about the lack of a need for any of the responses on the part of the government. They absolutely, totally knew that that you should not be injecting in a viral RNA into humans. They knew that. And to think that they brought him over here to award him this prestigious award absolutely nauseates me. But then when you get on and you get the national broadcaster, a civil servant in effect, and one of the highest paid one of them, you know, and I'm stuck for words, and I'm very seldom stuck for words. But when you see her and the sort of submissive and subservient way, you know, the soft soaping, the unctuous way that she dealt with him, I found absolutely, all I can say is sickening.
Yeah.
It was such a soft interview. There was nothing in it. But when it came down to what he said, I totally agree with what he said. All those things he says are absolutely right. The only problem is it was not him who was telling the truth. He was lying, and he was lying through his teeth.
Yeah.
And he knew that the whole concept of COVID is very, very complex from the point of view, you know, whether there's a whole spectrum of beliefs that there was a virus, a deadly virus that was killing people, right through to the fact that there was no virus of any relevance, that it was a mild flu. I subscribe to the idea that it was a mild flu. Now, I also subscribe to the idea that there was gain of function. There's fairly good evidence that they did put 16 nucleotides into the furin cleavage site of the spike protein to facilitate the that's a bit complicated perhaps, well, but it did facilitate the spread and the infectivity of the virus. I totally accept that happened. And I also feel, as some experts say, that they probably seeded this around the world into places like New York. It never got to Ireland. I do not believe that any person in Ireland died of COVID. And I do not believe, I mean, of COVID virus. They died of COVID through neglect, through intubation, through hunger, dehydration. I believe the vast majority of people in the nursing homes were, in effect, killed off through iatrogenic interventions. In other words, through the action of the doctors. At the end of the day, this man, to me, is a mass murderer. And to see, what's her name, O'Callaghan, speaking to him and fawning over him, as I say, I find it sickening.
Yeah, well, we'll come to another clip in a little while where she asks him about the origin of the virus. And and I have another clip to follow that up with from Senator Ron Paul just a couple of days ago. So I think Mr. Fauci is going to get caught out.
He is caught out. He is caught out. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Gerry, sorry, John, I'll come to you next, but I'll just throw in another clip in the mix there as well. Another Fauci one. We have a couple here. Well, actually, John, I'll bring you in. Actually, I'll go straight to that one I was talking about. So where did the virus originate? So he's asked this now.
I don't know. It's still unknown and unclear. There have been a number of evolutionary virologists who are no skin in the game. They're people that don't have an agenda, and they're from all over the world. They've looked at the information and they feel it is more likely than not definitive, but highly likely that it was a natural spillover from an animal reservoir in the market in Wuhan to then infect the person and spread. The other possibility is that it was a lab leak, that people were working on it in the lab. The only issue is there's no evidence for that at all.
Okay, the other possibility. Sorry, let me just throw in this other clip now, just on top of that. Here we go.
The government knew that scientists...
This is just released four days ago, I believe. Senator Rand Paul here.
We're trying to get government funding to make a virus. Who else in the government knew that scientists were trying to get government funding to make a virus that would have looked like COVID?
And it's important to know that we only know anything about this because of a whistleblower. So in 2021, a Lieutenant Colonel, Marine, Lieutenant Colonel Joseph Murphy at DARPA came forward and he said he'd been looking for research like this because he was convinced that it was going on. He went to a folder, a computer folder, and he looked for this and it wasn't there. Then he saw another exchange between myself and Fauci, and he saw the tension heating up, and he went back to the folder and looked, and all of a sudden, the document was there. And the document indicated that Wuhan lab was working with UNC, Ralph Barrick, and with Peter Daszak at EcoHealth, and that a proposal was to take a coronavirus, which is not very infectious in humans usually, and make it more infectious in humans by putting a special cleavage site called the furin cleavage site in. Well, DARPA passed on this. DARPA said, well, damn, that sounds a little bit crazy to create a virus that could be so contagious, because coronavirus can be deadly, but it's typically not very contagious. Now you're going to combine deadly with contagious, you got a real problem. And so they turned it down. And so we always said when 2020 happened and we saw the sequence of COVID-19, alarm bells should have gone off in DARPA, and they should have come forward and warned us that Wuhan had already proposed to create a very similar type of virus.
That doesn't really line up with what Fauci said a couple of minutes ago. I think he's going to get caught out here. Yet, like, he's getting caught out over in the States, but we're bringing him over here to take out Paddy's here and giving him a award and giving him a pat on the back. Isn't he great?
Yeah. Well, yeah, Fauci sounds like he's saying stuff he would have said in 2020. I mean, that's the kind of dateline you'd put on those things. I mean, we know a lot. We know a lot about this. We know that Fauci was up to his neck in moving all of this gain of function stuff to China, to Wuhan. We know that he was part of that project, and we know a lot more about the activities of different agencies, US agencies in those years. But you see, what's happening here is the cover-up of a crime. I mean, you know, Miriam O Callaghan introduced it in a certain way, that he was here to receive this medal, and that by implication, oh, he just happened to run out to Montrose to do a little bit of an interview while he was here. It's the other way around. I mean, Fauci doesn't even know where he is most of the time. You know, he's doing a tour, which is a crime cover-up tour. But you see, it's not just Fauci's crime that has been covered up. It's the crime of the entire establishments of the West. All the governments, all these institutions, all the medical institutions, all the scientific institutions, all the academic institutions, all the media institutions are all in. That's why they're greeting Fauci like a savior. and treating him like, you know, he's St. Joseph or somebody. Like, you know, he was fab to all our team, said Miriam in a message she put out there. And there's a big selfie of herself and all these goons in this, you know, for the team, production team, with Fauci as if he was, you know, I don't know, Bono or somebody. I can't think of anybody more appropriate at the moment. Possibly it's a bit too appropriate, actually, but you know, that's a different story. But you know, so like, this is a crime. Let's be clear about all this, that all of these are crimes, and we have been involved in the most monumental and most heinous crime in these people have been responsible for the most heinous crime in all of history, perhaps, in the sense that it is so continuous, so monolithic, that everybody's, all power institutions are roped into it and all are compromised by it. And now they're seeking to reconstruct reality so as to pretend that it wasn't a crime at all. And in part of actually, this is the really insidious part, that part of actually convincing people that there was no crime means continuing the crime for another period. You know, that they need to have another round of vaccines in order to, so they can act all nonchalant and, oh, just another vaccine, yeah, another shot, it was really successful last time, take another jab, and, you know, and then we'll continue not counting the excess deaths, right? And we'll continue calling, describing as disinformation anybody who insists on calling out the excess deaths. And, you know, the people who are suffering, and really people are in this country, you can see it every day now, funerals, everywhere you go, there are hearses flying, or, you know, in one direction or another, and nobody will talk about it. And I say, you know, it's obvious. If you were Colombo and you were here for about 10 minutes listening to the radio, you'd pretty much work out what had happened, because the silence of the media, of the political class, of the medical profession, of all this around the question of excess deaths is sufficient to convince me that they're guilty as sin.
Oh, absolutely. You just look in the local papers here every week, and just the lists and lists of people who have died. It's crazy. It really should get people thinking. Susanne, like the whole COVID thing, I've set up a couple of kind of media platforms over the years, first of which being 13 odd years ago. And I kind of stopped that. I had gone back to college. I'd done a degree in media production management. I went down to Kerry then and did another course in film and TV. And then I'd moved to Dublin, and I was working in Satanta Sports, and I was happy out doing that. And next thing, COVID came. And I remember we did that's what prompted me to set up the Irish Inquiry. And I remember we did our very first show on the 4th of April 2020. And yeah, it was a crazy time. And that's when I met Susanne. It's probably nearly 3 years ago, Susanne, since we met. I remember the day very well. I remember the protest we were at when we chatted for the first time. So I know you have loads to say on this, Susanne, but let me give you another clip, and you can jump in wherever you want. But this is an interesting enough one.
Therapies.
So basically, O'Callaghan, Miriam has asked him about his working relationship with Donald Trump.
He was promoting therapies that had no basis in fact, like hydroxychloroquine and ivermectin. So it was very tough for me, because I did not take pleasure in contradicting the president of the United States. But I had to do it. I had to do it to preserve my own personal integrity.
He had to do it to preserve his own personal integrity. He had to do it to preserve his own. That's about it. Like, Susanne, have you anything to say there? Like, I know we've taken ivermectin, and it was great. It did a good job for us. But anything on the whole COVID thing? What do you think of this Fauci character, Susanne? Or do you want to get in there at all? Oh, sorry, have you muted? Sorry, apologies. I'll unmute you there. No.
No. Well, just to say on the ivermectin, we did a video on that recently, where there was a study in Peru regarding ivermectin. They gave everybody ivermectin there, and their death rate was really low. And also in India, I think they did the same. But this Fauci guy, you know, what was he talking about there? Protecting his integrity.
Yeah.
This is the little tricks of a psychopath. You know, he loves to sit there and pretend he's such a good person, and he thinks he's deceiving everybody, and he probably is deceiving most people, unfortunately. Miriam is going to be all over him for the reasons John said, and she loves her old selfies. Do you remember she had when we were all locked down during COVID, and she was out in RTE having a party and posting her selfies. But this Fauci guy, like, to me, he's Gerry and John have touched on most of the things I would have said, so I just going to comment on what I think of him. And I think this is a classic case of a psychopath, and they are very common amongst us, and you'll often find them in high level positions. And his wife, actually, interesting fact about his wife, she's a bioethicist, and she proposed that Americans should be have psychiatric drugs put into their drinking water in order to sedate them. And Fauci himself has, if you look into his past, beyond COVID, there's a lot of dodgy things there. He's stood over really, really horrifically cruel experiments on dogs. I won't even describe those experiments. Other people probably won't want to hear it. It's extremely upsetting. And he's just, I mean, like, I don't know. We caught Miriam's brother Lovely, didn't we? Do you remember that? We caught Jim O'Callaghan outside the Law Society, and he was promoting the fact that the government had done such a good job during COVID of protecting the country, and we collared him. And he was very keen to get away, and he nearly ran you over with his bike. I think he actually rammed his bike into you.
He did. He couldn't get away quick enough. It's one thing I miss about, I mean, I love living here in Castlebar and Mayo, but it's one thing I miss from Dublin. I don't get to kind of chat up these guys on the street, let's say. It was great crack approaching them because they had nothing to say, because, you know, Miriam just shows you that these are the sort of questions you get. Like, you know, this is the extent of questioning from our state broadcaster. It's an absolute joke. Anybody, I encourage people to get out in the street. If you're around the city centre, hang around Leinster House on Tuesday, Wednesday and Thursday before and after lunch, and see if you can have a chat with any of these TDs. They're very accessible. We're coming up in an hour now. I want to play this clip and get Gerry's opinion on this, and then the last clip I'd like to get everyone's take on it. So here we go.
People who are not getting interventions of treatment and prevention because of the misinformation that goes on. So you have what would have been an avoidable loss of life because of misinformation about vaccines. That's terrible.
Gerry, yeah, I just want you, Gerry, I mean, as a doctor, what, like, people who are still taking these vaccines, like, what do you say to them? What's your experience, by the way? Have you heard from many people who were taking the vaccines early on and have changed their mind and regretted? Like, what have you heard on the ground from people, Gerry?
Yeah, I've got a lot of contact with people. Not, well, I have a contact as a doctor, but not as a doctor-patient relationship anymore since I was suspended. But I do go out and I walk. I walk every day. I like to get in sort of 10 kilometers every day, and I walk around Celbridge. I meet people all the time. You wouldn't believe the number of people who have buyer's regret or whatever, you know, a vaccine regret. I'm very hopeful and very confident that it's getting through to the people. I was over in a local garage. I renovate old cars and that, so I would spend a lot of time in a local garage, and I was over with the guys there yesterday, and they were all saying, yeah, Gerry, exactly what you said, what you were telling us in 2020 has come true. Everything you said has come to fruition. That's my impression. Now, there are the people who cannot accept that they made such a major mistake. And as I was saying to somebody yesterday, I don't know if it was John or you, Stephen, that within any family, there was always the pusher. There was always the nurse or the teacher or somebody who was totally committed to the COVID, to the concept of COVID. And these are the ones that were pushing everything from the masking right through to the vaccines.
Mm-hmm.
If you pushed your children or your sisters or brothers or mother and father into getting the vaccine, it's damn difficult to accept that you were totally wrong. Whatever self-harm you may have done, but it's damn difficult. So these people will be the last ones to turn, but there's no doubt about it. There is a massive, massive turn in society, and it's only a matter of time. Now the question is, will they introduce, you know, a new one? I've no doubt that there will be some new illness or some new disaster that they will take its place. You know, something like a new bird flu, where all chickens, all hens, all, you know, are going to have to be slaughtered. These are the kind of things that I fear, because they will and can do anything. You know, when you see them lying about methane, and they lie about carbon dioxide, and they lie about COVID, and they, you know, there is nothing beyond them. And again, I'm a firm believer that this is about reducing the population.
Yeah, and I just came into my mind there when you were talking about the vaccines there. Luke O'Neill, some people watching might have seen that video where I happened to catch Luke O'Neill after one of his little stints on Pat Kenny, and one of the things I said to him is, but isn't it the case that there is no medium to long-term data, and as we don't know what's going to happen? And he's like, well, yeah, that is the case. We will know that after a couple of 100,000 vaccines have been rolled out. So, you know, throw it out there, see what the effects are, and, you know, that's it. So, by the way, just on Luke O'Neill, and haven't mentioned doorstepping people, he's still regularly on News Talk. He is a very, very accessible man. Wait around the corner, somebody, arm yourself with some good questions and a camera, and put that fella under pressure, because he has it way too easy, that Luke O'Neill.
Yeah, but he's so arrogant and smug.
He is.
It just bounces off him. Like, that guy thinks, you know, he thinks he's Bono. I mean, Bono thinks he's Luke O'Neill. I'm not quite sure, but the overall, you know, like, that guy is so smug and so, you know, doorstepping him, I think, would make no difference, because he just sneers at last. And at that interview with you, he just sneered and laughed. I think I think you asked him, did he get the vaccine? I think he said no, he hadn't done.
No. I don't know if he ever actually did, but for a while he was definitely saying no. He
didn't. Of course he would. Only a fool who knew anything about it would let a synthetic viral RNA be injected into their body encapsulated in a lipid nanoparticle. Like, you need to be a total clown to allow that to be injected into you.
Yeah. Okay, well, good luck to anyone who got it. I wish you all the best.
Well, can I just come in there? I have said, and I always say, and people are always asking me, you know, and say, oh, I got one of them, or I got two of them. I've always said that the manufacture of the vaccine, not that it was a vaccine, but was so complex and so misunderstood, even by the manufacturers, so that I've absolutely no doubt that an awful lot of them were probably administered, because the administration of them, do you remember initially they were saying they had to be, you know, delivered at minus 76 degrees or something like that, and then suddenly they were all given sort of at room temperature. I'm fairly certain that an awful lot of people got duds.
Well, hopefully, yeah. I really hope
so. And that is what I say to people. Say, I got two of them. Say, well, you know, I think a high enough proportion of them where I don't think they were deliberately giving out placebos, except perhaps to the VIPs. But I would honestly believe that the manufacturing, the complexity of manufacturing was, you know, it was a total experiment. And the administration was also higgledy-piggledy, is also rushed and done in different factories and different distribution centers, and that I would think an awful lot of the messenger RNA had denatured by the time it got into the people. And that's what I say to people, just hope that you dodge the bullet. And I think millions, billions, hopefully have.
Yeah, I really hope so. Look, it's 8 minutes past. Very last clip, and a quick comment from everyone. Or do you want to get in first, John?
I just want to say something about that last clip with about the Fauci. That strange kind of non sequitur that he was uttering there about like disinformation. missing operations and scans and things, and then being opposed to vaccines or whatever, questioning the vaccines. I mean, that is, there's so many lies packed in there that it's hard to kind of understand why he would say such a thing, other than that he thinks he's in probably the stupidest country on earth and can get away with saying anything. And he's looking at perhaps the representative of the stupidest people on earth, but she's nodding like a donkey at him, as if now. But what I want to say about that is, like, it's not purely by way of rhetoric or insult, but it's just simply to draw attention to the fact that this guy is telling massive lies concerning the massive crime, and the journalist is nodding away at him. That is serious misdirection of the audience and of the public with regard to the most grave matter you could possibly think of. And that qualifies as a crime for all persons concerned in that. This is not just bad journalism. It's not just, you know, oh, this is unfortunate, this is terrible, oh, she's such a bad interviewer. No, 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 no. This is covering up a crime. I keep saying this. It's very important that the act of misdirection will deceive so many people into thinking that, oh, he's so lovely, isn't he? And you know, he came to Ireland especially to tell us all these things and to reassure us that we could take the vaccines and not mind those conspiracy theorists and anti-vaxxers. Like, these guys know what they've done. They're not idiots. Okay, maybe some are.
What about Miriam? Sorry, like, what level of understanding does she have? Is she just completely naive and stupid, or does she know that the whole game?
It's been going long enough now. I do understand the psychology of groupthink that they've worked in this, which creates this outgroup, you know, the disinformationists, the anti-vaxxers, the conspiracy theorists, and they're sort of knocking on the window, you know, and they're threatening you. Their menacing, ugly faces are up against the pane at last, and you better make sure that you keep your act together and don't be waylaid from the mission of saving every life, you know, that kind of stuff. So I do have to give some credit for stupidity to all these people, but it's 4 years down the road now. This has been going on, like, and you want to be wild stupid to be still believing it.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, Gerry. Just before I think I have you muted there in case you want to come in. Hold on 1 second. Yeah, go on.
Loath as I am to disagree with John, but I believe you just look at the partying and that was going. You talked about Miriam at her selfies in the party, having the parties in RTE, and that happened in pretty much every studio and around the world. And as well with the what was it, the golf gate thing in Donegal. I would say, and I would say the message went out to most of those people. There's nothing here to worry about. I believe that Miriam O Callaghan was told back in 2020 by the experts, yeah, you can party away. You don't have to worry about anything. As were the people in the Dáil and that. There was a nod and a wink. And so I would think that Miriam O Callaghan knew back in 2020 there was nothing going on. She now knows that not only was there a non-relevant virus, but in effect the solution to that has a major detrimental lethal effect. The other thing about, you know, Fauci is he's fairly typical of the sort of narcissistic psychopath. They're so superior, they really like to rub it in, you know. He's coming over here and he's telling these blatant lies that he knows are blatant lies, but he likes rubbing it in to us poor gombeans. No, but I think he'd do it any place in the world. I don't think he particularly likes or dislikes the Irish that he's trying to rub it in, but he feels so superior and so smart that he likes to I just give them another little layer of lying and another layer of lying and another. They're too stupid to cop this.
Now, final clip. Would you think that Anthony Fauci would be in favor of a COVID inquiry? I wonder.
Serve a useful purpose, or not?
Well, it depends on what you mean by an inquiry. So if you're doing it to strengthen your capability of responding more appropriately and learning from the lessons, because no one does things perfectly. So if you could learn from the lessons of what you experience so that you prepare yourself better for the possibility and, in fact, the likelihood that sometime in the future we're going to have another pandemic outbreak. If, however, an inquiry is politically motivated to try and put blame on someone appropriately or inappropriately, I don't think that is a good idea.
No. So we definitely don't want any blame. That's very important, I think. Does anybody, let's just, does I get a comment maybe from everybody to finish on that, or anything else related to this lovely, great show? Susanne, do you want to come in? Or who is that?
Oh, yeah. No, I would just say, the only thing I'd say about it is obviously he doesn't want an inquiry, but he does use a word. Again, this is sort of a slip of the tongue, you know, appropriately or inappropriately. So he doesn't feel that people who to blame should appropriate blame is not.
Yeah.
Like that is a kind of, I don't know if it's a Freudian slip. I kind of, but appropriately or inappropriately, he doesn't want blame allocated. You know?
I think that's a kind of confession, really, isn't it? I mean, he's blurting out his guilt, really, and he's saying, I don't even want you to investigate me, even though I am guilty as charged. I mean, so he's that's the thing they seem to do, to confess their sins in public. As some kind of occult kind of a ritual by which they can in some way, expunge themselves of responsibility or guilt for what they've done, on the basis that they've told people what they've done, they've implied in various ways what they're guilty of, and therefore they're not really guilty.
Yeah, now that was actually, Miriam was putting that to him in relation to the COVID inquiry here in Ireland. So I wonder, is there any blame that could be handed out in a COVID inquiry here, or what will a COVID inquiry look like here? What will happen, do you reckon, Susanne?
Well, it's a non-criminal inquiry, and it's not as far as I know, it's not an independent inquiry. So, and when he was asked that question there, you can see him kind of thinking, well, depends what you mean. Do you mean a criminal inquiry? If you mean a criminal inquiry, then no. I agree with John there. He's kind of, he is confessing a little bit his sins, and they do have this compulsion to do that. I know it's probably for the reason John said, but also just because I think people like this, they do enjoy, getting away with something, even when they've more or less admitted it. He's still going to get away with it, and he knows that. So he can behave how he wants. He's untouchable. He might never be held to account. I think we all know that.
Yeah.
Like
it is extraordinary that he can come to Ireland after the 4 years he put in and still talk the same bullshit as he was talking in the White House in April 2020. Like, that's absolutely remarkable, and it's no wonder he's smug. Like, given that that's his experience everywhere he goes.
I think the interesting thing there as well, he uses, this is sort of the concept of certain words having certain meanings. And he used the word, if it were a political inquiry, he'd be against it. Now that's a very, very easy, this is sort of neuro-linguistic programming. If it were a political inquiry, I'd be against it. It would never be a political inquiry. It would fundamentally, if it was an inquiry of any use, it'd be a medical inquiry. And as Susanne says, a criminal inquiry. These would be the things. But a political inquiry, hello, But he throws in that word to give it's a way of saying I would be totally against a political inquiry. It's also practiced, and I would suggest that the questions perhaps were practiced.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Well, we're going for an hour and 20 nearly. I want to thank you all for coming on. It's a great show. I mean, thank God really for Anthony Fauci and RTE and RTE Investigates and Primetime and Upfront with Katie Hannon, because if they weren't there, we wouldn't be doing the show. So what else would we be doing, So
I can assure you, John and I could find things.
Oh, you probably you'd have something to do. All right, okay. I'd have nothing to do.
We could excoriate pretty much any program. And I know that Susanne there would give a good hand as well at ripping many programs apart. If you want, we'll watch Big Brother or something, or the one of these, the weather program. What was it? The one last week that was on?
Oh yeah, Rising Tides.
Yeah.
We must get you maybe, Gerry, to do a review of it was a 3-part series, wasn't it? I think just 3 episodes.
No, that's asking a bit much for me to watch all 3 episodes. Come on, that's inhumane. What's cruel and inhumane treatment. You couldn't. I watched one of them, and again, it was very nauseating. But there again, I'm easily sickened, you know.
Yeah, well, I mean, RTE will do that to you very easily anyway, you know, sicken you. So listen, we'll wrap it up. Thanks very much. Thanks very much, John and Gerry, and very best of luck with your campaign. I hope it all goes well. I would love to see you both get elected. It'd be fantastic. And maybe we'll have another chat in a couple of weeks. Myself and Susanne here are also running in local elections, myself in Castlebar and Mayo, and Susanne in Dublin somewhere. And yeah, we'll leave it there. Not sure. What's the latest, Susanne? Any update there? You've a few options.
I don't know. Maybe people out there could help me decide. I'm from the Greater Blanchardstown area. There's no point in running in my area. There's about 85% foreign nationals, and some people have been encouraging me to run in Tala. So we'll see.
Where are your parents from?
My father is originally from Finglas. My mother was from Ballyfermot.
Yeah, well, the kind of Ballyfermot, Trim, Inchicore area would probably be an area that would.
Yeah. Anywhere people want me, just.
Yeah. So let us know in the comments.
Let me know.
Well, they won't go out. They won't go out and drag you in. It's as simple as that. You've got to get yourself in there. You know. I'm originally from Drimna, so that'd be an area that I would run in. I'm an original Drimna lad.
Yeah, well, I used to live in Tala, and I lived in Tala twice, and have family there, and would have spent a lot of time there growing up, so I'm very familiar with it as well. Probably more so than Ballyfermot, But it's just wherever people want you to be. It's not that Blanchardstown has a population or a 85% population of foreign nationals, but Ongar does, which is where I live. And then we have Castleknock here, and you're just not going to get, we have Roderick O'Gorman, Leo Varadkar, Jack Chambers, and Paul Donnelly as our TDs here in Blanchardstown.
It's as bad as Dunleary, Sandyford.
So is it bad there?
Oh, it's terrible there. It's the center, the center of all things bad.
Yeah, I ran there in 2020 in the general election. I got 968 votes, which is a kind of a small village in Mayo. If I could find that village, I could be the Lord Mayor.
Yeah. Good stuff. Well, listen, best of luck to everyone in your election campaigns, and we'll be back, myself and Susanne, next week for episode 3 of the Spin Bin. So, all the best, lads and lassie. Talk to you soon.
Thanks very much. Good night, everybody.
Well done, Stephen. Well done.
Bye bye.